next panel here. My name is Derek Cummings. I work for the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. And just a note on lunch, apparently dessert will be served directly to you at the table, so you don't need to get up and move out. So that's great. Municipal leaders are at the front lines of economic growth and resource development in British Columbia. They see the challenges and opportunities, and that's why CAP sees their voices as such an important part of the conversation. And we're really fortunate to be joined by three respected and outspoken mayors. So on the stage today will be Kermit Dahl, Mayor of Cambell River, Brad West, Mayor of Port Coquitlam, and Leonard Krog, Mayor of Nanaimo. And moderating the discussion is my friend, Dallas Smith. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage for United Mayors, One Message, Why Resource Communities Matter to All of BC.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's interesting with the crowd we have. What do you guys feel like talking about? It's an honor to be invited to help moderate's a term I'll use loosely, knowing the three of you as well as I do. It's a pleasure to be here to just talk about some issues that really matter. UBCM is always a great time when we come together, and sometimes I'll flippantly talk about, okay, let's see the rural-urban divide in its entirety, but the impact that some of the issues we're here to talk about today are having an effect on all of our economy. We're in a position where we don't have the luxury of saying that's a rural issue, that's an urban issue, because at the end of the day, the development of natural resources is what pays for everything that we love about British Columbia, Canada, et cetera, et cetera. So we've come together to just have a bit of a dialogue, and again, I'll use that term loosely as well, have a little bit of dialogue just about, I think we know how we've gotten here, but it's where do we go? It's one thing to talk about it's Trump, or it's this, or it's First Nations, it's reconciliation. There's a little bit of piece of truth to all of that, but if we actually have a thorough discussion, we can actually get beyond what are the contributing factors to the problems that we're facing and actually put ourselves in a position to deal with them. And so at first, I have to show respect to the Lekwungen people for allowing me into their territory. It's always a pleasure to be in Victoria. My name is Dallas Smith. I'm the president of Nanwakolas Council. I'm acting chief of the Clowitsis Nation. And we'll just start off with some introductions. So, Your Worship.
Am I on? Sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leonard Krog. I'm the mayor of the city of Nanaimo. Lawyer by profession, 7 years as mayor, 18 years as a member of the BC legislature and a Democrat. So that will provide contrast this morning to Christie's comments. No, I'm just teasing. The great thing about being a municipal politician is you don't have to be partisan. As I said to my friend Barry Penner earlier today, I don't miss the partisanship of Victoria at all, and he agreed with me completely. Look, Nanaimo, at the time of contact, the industry was coal. We refer to him as Coal Tai. I don't know his proper Indigenous name, but it's rather out of fashion now because it's what led to the colonization of Nanaimo. And coal was king for a very long time, but then forestry, and forestry was very important. My father was what we used to refer to as a Jippo logger, an independent logger. He'd be a member of the TLA if he was alive today, but he's been gone since 1958. My sister-in-law spent a long career, starting with what is a bit of BC history, Macmillan Bloedel, and then Weyerhaeuser, and finished up with Western. My community still has Harmac. It still has Coastland Mills, which if any of you know about veneer products, they ship around the world. Harmac is incredibly important to our community, and we've still got a Western Forest Products mill at Duke Point. Moreover, we are the center for a number of companies that serve the forest industry, so forestry remains very important in Nanaimo. And that's why I'm here in this panel today, because the forest industry in this province is neither getting the attention that it deserves, nor the recognition that it deserves for its importance in terms of sustainability. If you want to talk about sustainable industries in this province, forestry is very much where it's at. The trees grow overnight. They are creating wealth as we sleep. So I think it behooves us to have a real conversation about it today. Thank you.
Your worship?
No,
That was the look you said you weren't going to give me, Kermit.
I'm Mayor Kermit Dahl, and for a lot of the people in the room already know that I hate being called your worship. So Dallas does it on purpose because he knows it pisses me off.
I'm motivating.
So I've been the mayor for 3 years. I was on council for a term before that. I'm a small business owner in Cambell River. I own an automotive repair shop, and I'm a mechanic by trade. I've spent 3 years telling people I fix shit. That's what I do. That's what mechanics do. They take your junk and they try to keep it on the road. And I do the same thing with this job. So, you know, we have logging, mining, and aquaculture in Cambell River. Our mine's been shut down since December of 2023. Aquaculture's been under attack by our federal government since December of 2019, and logging has been being curtailed more and more each year. So that's how we got this started. We brought together a business advisory team at the city of Cambell River to talk about what we would do in relation to Trump's tariffs. And in our first meeting, the discussion went on for a short period of time, and it was realized that really our bigger problems are not Trump's tariffs. If any of you ever Googled what Trump was tariffing and then Google what the Canadian government was tariffing, you'd find that the list was substantially different on what was coming to Canada and what we were paying 25% tariffs on, rather than what was going south. And in a logging community, if you're not doing any logging, then you don't have to worry about tariffs. First, you have to get the permits to cut the trees so you can ship it. So if you're not getting any permits, you're not cutting any trees, you're not shipping any trees to the mills aren't cutting any wood, and then you're not shipping anything south anyway. So if you're not shipping anything south, you don't need to worry about tariffs. You need to worry about getting your economy moving again. And that's kind of how we got started on this, that spun into what we got today. That's about it for me for right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brad West. I'm mayor of the city of Port Coquitlam, hometown of this country's greatest Canadian, Terry Fox, and also absolutely. And also hometown to one of the largest rail yards in Western Canada, if you didn't know. I'm very pleased to be here. It's a topic that is very close to my heart, one I'm passionate about. Before I was elected mayor, I spent several years as both a member and a staffer for the United Steelworkers, representing many of the men and women in this province who work in so many industries that I know are represented here. I recall actually being in Victoria with one of our members, and he was a coal miner, lived in Sparwood, and we were in the second best part of the province. He was in Sparwood, and we were down here, and it was a conference kind of like this, but a lot of lower mainland types about. And I remember he said to me, geez, when I meet these people, I can't tell them that I'm a coal miner. They're going to think that that's a dirty job. It's an industry that is harmful. I remember the conversation I had with him. I said, you proudly tell them that you're a coal miner. You tell them that their kids go to a decent school because you go and mine coal. You tell them that when they have to go to the emergency room, it's because thousands of British Columbians like you go mine for us. And in doing so, contribute to this province and the services that we all depend on. And so that's a passion that I've carried with me from that day. And I'm really pleased to be here because it's about time we recognize that this is a single province. We are one people. We're not a bunch of islands unto ourselves with no connection. And unfortunately, many of my colleagues in the Lower Mainland, and I wish I saw more of them out here today, need to understand that we don't live in a bubble. Our future is determined by as much of what happens outside of the Lower Mainland as what happens inside of it. And I think that the time... seems to be a lot of people waking up to that reality and the harsh consequences of having a provincial economy that has put a hell of a lot of eggs in the real estate basket. And the things that were once synonymous with our province have been diminished in that process. And this is not some sort of natural occurring phenomenon. This is not something that was always destined to be. So when I hear terms like sunset industry, people who say that are full of shit. We are where we are because government has chosen to take us there through their policies and their regulation. And anything that has been done that way sure as hell can be undone. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today about how we do that. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor West. I think you really hit the nail on the head for what we need to get out of these discussions when we're all in this together. You know, I think about the impacts that the salmon farming sector has taken over the last couple of years since 2019 when the Discovery Islands got shut down. You know, we all talk about homelessness. To me, homelessness used to be an urban issue. It wasn't something we really faced in resource communities because everybody worked. Everybody was able to work enough that they could take care of the people that weren't lucky enough to be fully employed or gainfully employed or weren't able to have whatever other, you know, processes that lead them to homelessness. Were able to manage it in small communities, in resource communities. And that's where we had to start to realize that these are problems that affect us across the board in British Columbia. And I think one of the steps in the right direction was when the previous government, a couple of governments ago, I guess, you know, did the regional trusts. I think of the trust model. Vancouver Island had a $50 million trust. The Southern Interior had a $50 million trust. The Northern Trust Initiative was a $180 million initiative. But what it did was it started to integrate First Nations and local governments on how to manage their areas a little bit better. And it really started some discussions that I wish we had a better economic circumstance to keep reinvesting in, because we are starting to bring solutions to the table at those processes. But then since the introduction of social media, we've really seen governments manage based on the outcry as opposed to the need and where we actually were and what we were trying to achieve. Thank you. And so what do? Do we get into a tit for tat on social media, or do we come to organizations like this and talk about what the solutions are going to be? What are some of the things that you would like to propose, Mayor Krog, to the audience that's here this week when it comes to the actual solutions? You know, we all know what's to blame. We can find lots of things to blame, but what's some of your thoughts on the solutions going forward?
Look, many of the solutions relate back to government policy, and right now I think it's fair to say the government isn't feeling the pressure, and I'll refer specifically to cutting permits, the pressure necessary to get them out the door. And I understand the concerns around dealing with Indigenous rights. The implementation of UNDRIP will probably prove to be, over time, one of the most complex changes ever wrought in our society and for the foreseeable future. It has enormous consequences. I'm not going to talk about it in a negative or a positive way when I say that, but coming to grips with that and getting a province on board in a way that we can cooperate and ensure the continuation of the success of what were historically very important industries in BC is going to be a challenge. But the immediate things are, and I think with respect, and I say this as a lefty, I think the Prime Minister is hitting the nail on the head in terms of the attitude of Canadians right now. Canadians are saying, given what's happened with our friends to the south, we are going to have to rely more on what we have and what we do and what we do best. How many of you have been to the rotunda of the BC legislature? Have you ever looked up? You ever looked up? What do you see? Well, that too. You see four magnificent paintings. One shows the forest industry, another shows the mining industry, another shows agriculture, and another shows fishing. Fishing faces its challenges, but with an aquaculture industry that is given the support it needs, you can create incredible jobs, and you can create them, most importantly, in Indigenous communities that otherwise, because of their isolation, would have little or no economy. Mining, with great respect, you know what? We thought the mines would eventually peter out. We're not looking for much gold anymore necessarily, and coal is on the way out to some extent, I'm sorry to say, and I had a brother in Fernie who did very well there. But we are now mining different minerals. We were looking for things that weren't important a few decades ago, and suddenly we need it for a modern electrified economy. In terms of logging, good golly, no matter how much the climate changes, trees are going to continue to grow. There may be different species in different parts of the province, but they will continue to grow, and they will continue to provide employment. And in terms of agriculture, we've learned now that you can't rely on what's happening in the States. And with climate change, you're seeing great differences in where crops are produced. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm with the Prime Minister to some extent in emphasizing what we have and get on with it. And I appreciate the environmental concerns, and I appreciate the nice folks who come out of Victoria and come up Island or to the Carmana or wherever they want to go, or Fairy Creek, and tell us that logging is bad. Notwithstanding that I understand our annual allowable cut, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't said it already, is supposed to be about 45 million cubic meters, and I think we're going to close in on what, maybe 28 this year? I mean, most of you who are here in business, can you imagine if your production was down by 1/3 in a given year? Do you think you'd be having a profitable time? So I get back to it. Government policy is crucial here, and government needs to move forward, and the quicker, the faster, the better, because things are not going to get better on their own. It's like the street disorder in our communities that plagues all of us. It's not going to get better on its own.
Oh, thank you so much. So insightful. You know, Mayor West, you talked about the fact that, you know, you grew up and understood this a little bit in your previous life before you turned into this world. And what would some of your messages be to some of your colleagues around the GVRD and some of those places when it comes to the importance of sustainable resource development in the province?
Well, I think we need to start by giving our collective head a shake. As I mentioned, the disconnect in understanding where the prosperity in this province is generated from and how intertwined the office job in Vancouver is to the activity that occurs in the rest of the province. You know, and I'd like to say that, you know, there needs to be more education, but at some point it's like, how much more education can you provide? You know, that's often, we like to think the best of everyone. So, well, they just don't understand. No, some people do understand, but they don't care. And so there's a lot of work that has to happen on there. Now, again, I think what's happening right now is we're learning by what's happening. So as I mentioned, the harsh consequence of having so much of the province's GDP tied to real estate is being laid bare in terms of what people are experiencing in their own lives, but also what the province is experiencing in terms of our balance sheet. And you know, you have people who are rediscovering what Leonard just spoke about, those murals, paintings, and what has been the backbone of this province for so long. And so hopefully that begins to be a turning point, and there's a follow-through to government policy. I have to say, one of the things that we have to correct is this unilateral disarmament that this province has engaged with in terms of the resources that we have all around us, and a process that we have designed, which is almost designed to allow those who never want to see anything happen be driving the bus. I mean, it's funny because right now the province is looking at municipalities and saying, oh geez, you know, you get a handful of people come out to a public hearing and oppose a rezoning, and they can upend the whole rezoning. And so rezonings, public hearings, gone. When it comes to developing our resources, they allow this process to be weaponized, where you have to consult with everyone on God's green earth to get their opinion about whether we should be able to log here, mine there, drill here. And at some point, you just gotta stop playing that game. And I think, again, it's about having reasonable, serious people in charge and being realistic about what drives this province and our economy. So we can start there.
Wow. I really want to pick up on that. A good friend of mine in the salmon aquaculture industry said, it's really time for the grown-ups to have a discussion about the realities. So my good friend Kermit, you know, you live right in the crossroads. We live right in the crossroads of reality. We went from a place where unemployment was just almost a lifestyle choice to where good, hard-working people are getting told that they can't do their job anymore because it affects people in a 50-mile square base in Greater Vancouver. And I'm trying to be as diplomatically correct, and most of you who know me know that's a bit of a challenge from time to time. But, you know, we've spent 3.5 years, well, six years now, fighting on the aquaculture debate. Now the forest industry's taking a downturn. Just what some of your thoughts on where we are and using Cambell River as an example, because I know that's the reason you got involved, because you were watching it all kind of get taken away from us. So just some of your thoughts on where we need to go with this.
Well, because Cambell River about 13 years ago lost their sawmill, and then 15, and 14 years ago lost the pulp mill, and that was a lot of good paying jobs there. We were really dependent on aquaculture, and the mine had downsized some, but it continued to operate. But then these Decembers came along, like December 2019, when the aquaculture issues started with the federal government and the DFO, and then the mine shutting down in December 23, and looking at what has our provincial and federal governments been doing for us. You know, the federal government clearly was attacking aquaculture, and it wasn't science-based. It was just a small group of individuals that were super well funded by some really wealthy Vancouverite. And our provincial government wasn't standing up to the federal government saying, whoa, hold on here, we can't afford to lose 1.6 or 1.7 billion dollars from this region. We can't afford to lose 6,000 jobs. You still don't hear that coming out of our provincial government as far as I've heard. So that leaves it to us. You know, we have to stand up and say no. And you know, if Cambell River stands up and says no, no one's going to hear that. Eventually some of them do, but not as much as when we all start standing up together and working together. You know, we have the chief of the Waiwakai and the chief of the Waiwakam here with us, and then Dallas from Nanwakolas Council, and we try very hard to work together and remember each other. And we might be 4 different communities, but really we're all just one larger community. So as long as we're collaborating and working together and remembering each other, our voice gets louder. And then when we bring groups together like this, it gets much louder. You know, we were having a meeting in City Council with our BAT team, Business Advisory Team, and I said, we need to bring all of the mayors together. Nobody's listening to us when it's just individuals, but if we can bring more of us together and speak as one voice, then we will be heard. I had no idea that I would end up sitting up here. I am the last guy that wants to do this. But it's what needs to be done. Whether I want to be here or I don't want to be here, this is what I gotta do to see the things changed, to fix the shit that needs to be fixed. It has to happen, or there's gonna be nothing left. Brad might have the biggest rail yard in Western Canada, but if there is no logs, and there's no ore, and there's no fish, eventually you don't need to have a rail yard. And that's where we are right now. We are on the cusp of being hurt badly. You know, we talked a little bit about the AAC being 45 million cubic meters. I've never been a logger, but I've worked closely with them. 70% of what my business does is related to the logging industry. You know, many members of our business advisory team are here. One that owns a logging company is over there. We've been a supplier of his company for a number of years. So I live this every day. My son's running the business now while I'm off doing this other job. So he gets to live it every day. And if we want our families to be able to continue, we need to step up and stop this ridiculous policy making that we have and start to work together to bring an end to this and prosperity back to the province. It's possible. We just need to quit saying it's not my job. I listened to that for 4 years as a councillor. And when I ran to be the mayor, I had a few meetings that I needed to have before I would decide to do this. Otherwise, I was going to walk away. One was with my wife. She had to agree first. And then one was with staff from city to make sure that we would be able to work together. And the other was with Ronnie and Chris to be sure that we could work together. And we've all been doing that. And now I hope that we're going to be able to bring everybody together and start working together as a bigger force and get this turned around.
Well said, Kermit. No. It's not just because Chief Roberts and Chief Chikite are two of my bosses, but I have to acknowledge the evolution of the relationship between the two nations and the city of Cambell River over the years. I've had a front row seat for a lot of this crap for a long time. And just seeing the evolution of that relationship over the last 4 or 5 years has really been inspiring to a point where we've realized there are mutual problems that we have, and we are standing together to work on it. I think one point I want to make just, about First Nations role in this is it's to make it quicker. UNDRIP isn't a weapon. It shouldn't be weaponized. It should be about building certainty. And the prime example of that is the TFL that Chief Roberts, Chief Chikite, myself, and Chief Rempel from Comox have an ownership stake in for our nations. It's an 880,000 cubic meter TFL. It's the only TFL in the province that cuts its whole volume because of the relationship that we built with the city, with the nations, and with the company at the end of the day. So if reconciliation's done properly, it is a pathway to reconciliation. But unfortunately, there's too many activists who've taken it and used it as a fear-mongering tool. And unfortunately, to date, governments have been listening to it. And this is one of the reasons why I was so happy to come and be part of this discussion. I think of my dear friend, Mayor Fernie, who's passed away, and now his son's sitting in the seat. So the fact that we're talking about a generational approach to getting back to, I don't want to say the good old days, because there are some challenges in those days, but it's amazing how a well-structured economy hides some of those challenges and takes away the impact of some of those challenges. So I really want to just start off with kind of your closing comments. I got that one a little bit backwards, but I'd really just like to hear what your kind of parting thoughts are with this. I know you're always hard to get what you're really thinking out, Mayor, but if you could just kind of give us what your closing comments would be.
I'll be very quick. I think the provincial government needs to be told in no uncertain terms, as I would have thought they would have learned from the last election in October. The rural-urban divide in this province is worse than it's ever been. And it's only going to get knit together again if the province is seen to be friendly to rural British Columbia and not relying on simply urban seats to be government. And I say that to all political parties. And we need, as Kermit's pointed out, the education, and Brad as well, the education of the public to understand where the wealth comes from. And so the presentation this morning was very valuable around that. It's those kinds of things. But in the very short term, the government has got to be seen to be acting and acting because there will be political consequences. And along the way, sadly, the more important thing is there are economic consequences that are avoidable. Negative economic consequences of the failure to act are avoidable. And so let's get on with it.
Kermit?
I'm not really going to add any more to what I've said. I think you got my point. But I wanted to thank some people while I have the opportunity. I want to thank our business advisory team members that took the time away from their businesses and their jobs and came down here to spend this time with us. I want to thank our city staff that came down a day early for UBCM to be here to support me in doing this. My council that also came down a day early for this. And Chris and Ronnie, Chief Shakite, Chief Roberts, and Dallas for doing what I asked them to do. But I want to thank all of the mayors from across BC that reached out and made the last 6 or 7 weeks of my life hell by answering a ton of calls to find out a little clarity on how this all came together. So thanks. 2 of them are sitting up here with me, and there's more in the room, but they were all across the province. We sent out an op-ed last Saturday, I think, and 12 mayors across the province signed that with me. I want to thank you all. And on Wednesday at 4:30, we have a networking social being brought together by the City of Cambell River and sponsorship from aquaculture and forestry at the Marriott from 4:30 to 6:30, and we would love to see many of you, as you can, make it over there. It's before the COPE event, or CUPE, so it won't be near as big of an ordeal, but it'll be great to see you over there.
Thank you. Mayor West, closing comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first I want to thank Mayor Dahl for his leadership in bringing this together. This is something that a lot of us have talked about and thought for quite some time, especially when I come to the UBCM, which up until this UBCM has been an incubator for bad ideas. I can tell you, if it's banned right now, it's because 10 years ago the UBCM called for it to be banned. They love me as much as I love them. So thank you, Mayor Dahl, for doing that. A couple things. First, the province has to drop the hypocrisy that is embedded so all over the place. You know, we have the provincial government and the premier championing LNG, excellent, but then turning around and letting the city of Vancouver and many other municipalities in Metro Vancouver ban natural gas. So it's okay, but only if they do it somewhere else. So we need to drop the hypocrisy, which is all over the place in terms of government policy. Second thing is we have to have the government stop just saying the right thing and start doing the right thing. I mean, I'm like you, I'm sure you're just tired of hearing government saying, we're gonna do it, we're gonna fast track, anytime I hear them now say, we're gonna make it easier, you know, it, like without fail, the exact opposite is going to happen. So now it's about actions, not about words. We need to get back to fundamentals, understanding that you can't have a province where everyone's employed in whale watching, and working in coffee shops, because that is where we are headed in a hurry. So we need to get back to the fundamentals. And the last thing, to be a bit provocative, the people in this room, I see many people, many leaders in industry. We have to stop being so goddamn apologetic about what it is that we do. We went through a period of time where the political winds were very much in the direction of climate zealots, I'll say, not activists, zealots. People detached from reality. And a lot of industry played footsies with that thinking. And now they've come for you. They don't care how many times you use the word sustainable or say that your industry is green. They don't care. And so I think we need to be a lot more, I hate saying this word, I'll use it, elbows up, about who we are, what we do, why it matters, and what it means to this province. Have some pride in that. Don't apologize. There's no need to. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here.
I want to thank the mayors and the sponsors for bringing us together today, and I just want to point out that, as we all know, there's many of us who are really thinking about how this goes forward. There's just as many progressive First Nations leaders who are thinking the same way around this. So let's not let the minority dictate what the rest of us know is right. So thank you all for being here today.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Mitchell. I have the best job in the world as I get to lead the Abbotsford Chamber of Commerce. So thanks to Stuart for the opportunity to be here today. I've been told that this is a room full of people with a lot of really big ideas, which I fully believe. So we're going to transition to the next section where there's an opportunity for anyone to pitch your idea, any big idea that you have on how to bridge the urban-rural divide in British Columbia. So I've got the mic here, and I'm just going to invite a show of hands for who wants to start out with a pitch. You'll have 60 seconds to pitch your big idea to these illustrious folks right here on the stage. So I'm going to walk over to this side of the room. Everybody else has a little bit more time to think about what their pitch idea is going to be. I'll come to you next, and please just say your name, and you'll have 60 seconds. I'll hold the mic for you.
Mayor Wasno, my pitch is get to all of the ratepayers associations and the senior associations in BC, send them this simple message, then you'll have a lot more people talking with the MLAs.
There we go. That was pitch number one. Any feedback from the panel up at the front?
The mayor's right. It's about influencing politicians. I mean, look, we can't empty our pockets here and solve the problem today. Government policy has an enormous impact, and so talk to politicians. I want to emphasize what I said. It didn't seem to catch. October 17th was a message from British Columbians. And the next election may well be a stronger message. And if in politics, the concept is you retain power in order to implement the things you think are good. And you only get to do that if you do a good job. So the current government or any government that succeeds it needs to be encouraged. And they'll be encouraged if they hear from voters.
Excellent. Okay, we have another pitch. Please say your name and your big idea.
I'm Susan Sinnott. I'm a city councillor at the City of Cambell River. So I'm a lifelong resident in Cambell River, and I'm going to say my pitch is that we have to stop the centralization of all the government ministries back into Vancouver and Victoria. I grew up at a time where you had smaller towns, even had court services. Nanaimo has a resident judge. I think they had a resident judge when you were at least half the size Cambell River is. We don't have a resident judge. We don't have ICBC offices with actual decision makers anymore because ICBC's changed. But what's happening is the hollowing out of the people that live and work in the government in our small communities. So they no longer are able to understand us. And they have to reverse that. I know that happened under the idea of efficiency and cost cutting, but it's really hurting the province overall.
Beautiful. Okay. Any other big ideas? I'll allow the panel to share a feedback piece if you'd like as I walk over here. Anything you want to say to that?
I'll just quickly say that I love that because, you know, I think a lot of the bureaucracy making decisions, they couldn't find these places on a map. And I often reflect upon when I have to make a decision as mayor, one of the first things I do is go to the area. Go to the place that's going to be impacted. Look at it. Talk to the people who live there on the ground. And I think that you're right. The disconnect makes it so easy. It's just, you know, it becomes robotic. And no understanding that these are real lives. It's a real community that's going to be impacted by the decisions that are made in a basement somewhere in Victoria.
Perfect. Okay, over to you.
Rose Klukas, Director of Economic Development and Indigenous Relations for the City of Cambell River. So building on what was already said at the Mayor's panel, my idea is for everyone to join us on Wednesday at the Alliance of Resource Communities, because it's the continuous dialogue of mayors and politicians from across BC that's going to make that change happen. So come and join us on Wednesday.
That was a pitch. I like it. That's excellent. Okay. Any other big ideas? Bonus points if you talk about how awesome Abbotsford is. No, I'm kidding. But you could do that. What's your idea?
Dave Wilkes, Mayor for the District of Spirewood. Thanks for the plug, Brad. But my encouragement is from the perspective of the four-letter bad word that we can never say, which is coal. I invite anyone to come out to the forgotten corner of the province, which supplies $12 billion worth of annual activity back to the province, and see what coal mining actually does. Thank you.
There was a hand up over here. Okay, over to you.
By the way, you don't make steel without coal.
One more over here.
Thank you. My name's Ron Paul. I'm the mayor of Quesnel, and we're looking at the graphic up there. How do we sort out the rural-urban divide? Quesnel and the Caribou Regional District have a resolution on the agenda. Unfortunately, it is a no recommendation, so it's not due to get debated, and it has to do with the Quesnel Highway 97 north-south interconnector. And the interconnector is on Highway 97, which is the only major highway transportation route connecting rural British Columbia, i.e. natural resources, to the urban areas of Vancouver, Victoria, etc. So when that resolution comes up to be put back on the agenda, do two things. Vote that it be put back on the agenda and vote for it. Thank you.
Hi, John Henderson, District of Seashelt. If you think the bureaucracy in this town is complicated, I was in Ottawa last week. Rural urban, we ran into a situation with immigration, and I think many of you from the rural areas understand this. We have zero unemployment in Seashell, and if we lose temporary foreign workers, we lose 1 in 5 businesses within the next 12 months. So that is why I was in Ottawa, and I'm happy to report, I think they maybe they get it. But I guess the question for the panel and for everybody, please keep that in mind. One size does not fit all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more pitches. I'm gonna see if there's any hands up. There we go. Okay, I see a hand over here. What's your big idea?
Thank you. Eric Anderson, District of Squamish Councillor. When we get our resource economies back going again, we are going to need tidewater access, effective transportation corridors, and affordable, well-placed industrial land. I live in a tidewater community in southwest BC where we've had all the above. We've served Quesnel and other folks in the interior for generations. We're losing it all. Losing it all, looking after housing development pressures. My suggestion is support this week for a resolution on provincial financial support for municipal industrial land planning. Municipalities can get grants for all manner of things, but there's no assistance for doing industrial land planning. It's really a pressing need. Thank you.
Taking one last scan of the audience here, okay. There we go. Well, those are some fantastic big ideas. I'll pass it back to the panel to close us off if there's any last comments that you want to make. But really, a big thanks to all of you for sharing your ideas. Thanks, everyone.
Nice. Why not? I think one point, spatial planning is so integral to all of this. To be able to sit down, whether you're on one side of the fence, the other, one side of the political party, spatial planning actually puts it in front of people so they can all recognize it and see it at the same time. And that's one of the things that's been cut back too far, is we haven't been able to sit down and actually share visions with each other from a spatial planning point of view. So I love that. I love that idea, because we need all the things that everybody talked about, and it's time that government starts to prioritize that a little bit from a communities first aspect. So I appreciate your comments.
I'm not going to add anything to that. You've heard enough from me. Give it to Kermit and Brad, and let these folks get on to and let you guys get on to the next session. Unusual, isn't it, for a politician to turn down an opportunity to speak into a mic?
I'm not going to add much, but I was wondering if the Alliance of Resource Communities logo got put up on the screen. Oh. It's on a stand, okay. So I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to that, and we'll be talking about that more on Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30.
Mayor West.
Just add, let this be the beginning, not the end, to a lot of work that we have to do.
Thank you. We've got a couple of extra minutes, and I wanted to dive into a comment you made about the Alliance of Resource Communities, Mayor Dahl, because someone asked about that. Why don't we find out a little more about what the Alliance of Resource Communities is going to do? Or what are the possibilities? Would you care to answer that question?
I don't know what the possibilities are. When I suggested this a few months ago, I didn't even think I'd be sitting up in this stage here talking, so we've already exceeded my expectations a while ago. So I hope that it brings communities across the province together so that we can speak to the provincial government and the federal government with one voice, and let them know that we're united to seeing our communities protected and our resources properly managed respectfully. So that pretty much sums up what I would say.
Well, if I could speak to that.
The possibilities are huge.
They are, and I've been thinking about it from a resource works perspective since I learned about it. I think it's commendable what you're doing, because it represents the basic, as I said earlier, the building block of democracy, municipal government on upward is where that power of the people comes from. And coming from you, including the First Nations governments, is impossible to cancel or ignore or tune out if you are speaking together. And that seems to be what you're proposing to do.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm proposing.
Maybe just one piece on that. I'm delighted to share that the Clowetsis First Nation and Nanwakolas Council will be talking about how we can formally participate with this Mayor's Council, because as has been said many times throughout this audience and on this panel, if we're not sitting down and having these dialogues together, and I think of some of the trailblazers, again, like my good friend Jerry Fernie, who just really stood up for small communities and the working people within them, whether that be organized labor, whether that be the companies that bring the investment for the labor to work in, whether that be First Nations looking at the jobs that come to our communities. We all really need to sit down and start having those discussions. So I'm really honored to have been invited to participate in your council. And we've kind of, I guess, pre-jumped the announcement on Wednesday, but I think we want to create that buzz. I know there's a lot of really progressive First Nations leaders who want to sit down with other progressive leaders to just make it better.
I just want to follow up a little bit of what Dallas is really driving at. The relationship between Sinamic First Nation and the City of Nanaimo a few years ago wasn't very good, and I'm not taking credit for it, or the new council taking credit for it, but things improved. And the one thing that Chief Wise and I can agree upon, and it's the most, I think, the important things in life, as far as his community is concerned. It's about education and work, jobs. And that's really what everybody wants. The First Nations of this province, who were denied for decades the opportunity to work in many occupations and professions through prejudice, through law, through all kinds of things, have been an underutilized human resource in this province for far too long. And the opportunities, and that's the way we should see it, and as Dallas has emphasized, not at least something to cause fear, but there is a certain amount of fear, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. The uncertainty around land claims, all of those things are challenging. But you know, if you actually sit down and talk to one another, how many of you are married? I've been married for 52 years, believe it or not. I didn't survive this long by my wife and I not sitting down and talking face to face once in a while about the things that were bothering us. Let us sit down and together achieve what Chief Wise wants to see for Sinamic First Nation: education and jobs. What do immigrants come to this country for heaven's sakes? They come to work and they come to give their children a better opportunity. And surely we can achieve that for all of us. And I think at the same time, with the negativity flowing northward from south of the border, there's still a wonderful opportunity here in BC, and if we rediscover our strengths and play to them, we at the same time can build a different kind of economy as well. One that will, yes, always have a reliance to some extent on our resources, but a reliance on other things too. So I think it's a positive time, folks, and this is a positive thing, and thank you, Kermit.
Very well put. It brings to mind for me just a bit of context I'd like to wrap around this, which I've really just been thinking about as we ramp down this toward the next, towards our keynote, Heather Exeter-Pirot, in a few minutes. It's different now. It's not just, we're sensing that. I think it's real. I'm just going to give you a few examples of what's happening right now that's indicative of public support. It's indicative of what people who have stepped up are doing and trying to do. Some of it is abundantly in evidence today in the room. For example, when we started earlier today, Karen Graham for ResourceWorks, rebooting our advisory council, bringing some great talents together with technical expertise, the credibility to build trust and understanding for the activities that will empower all the things that the mayors and others have been talking about. That's one thing, and I'm really, really proud to see that coming forward, having its own life force, and I'm really, really happy to see that. Similar, the board of ResourceWorks, you've seen some of our directors here, and they too bring that authority and counsel to what we're doing. But I can point to what Barry Penner, who's going to be speaking later, is doing. He's been doing some public opinion research at the Energy Futures Institute. It's showing that regular citizens are kind of comparing what they're told they have to think and what their sensory experience is in real life, and realizing there's quite a gap on some issues. And a lot of those issues are around energy and how we solve that. So that's an important part of it. Also, with the impetus for reconciliation to bring all British Columbians together, the work that this year Garth Jackson over here at the Indigenous Partnerships Success Showcase, and many of you in the room are familiar, as Dallas is, with being on the stage there and being in the room there. That is about the greater collectivity of Canadians, British Columbians, being part of economic reconciliation and solutions, and that's what we're seeking through the program. I'd encourage you at any point to hear about what we're doing on November 13th, because it's important stuff. Those are a few things. We're going to be doing some work. You saw a reference to Professor Jerome Giassaroli from BCIT, what he has done. There's exciting news. I can't give you too much right now about how ResourceWorks is going to be able to be part of building knowledge awareness in the educational pathways, particularly around the STEM area, because that is so important. The report on your tables, I'm giving a bit of an advertorial here for ResourceWorks, if you haven't noticed, but I've got the mic, so, and I paid for the sound desk, so. Lock the doors. But the shaping the piece, it felt as if there wasn't an up-to-date understanding of the contribution of what some call the crown jewel of the BC economy, which is the Montney Shale. There's other crown jewels you could point to, all kinds of different deposits and forestry and the potential of oceans and fields. But the Montney in particular obviously is what has powered the LNG opportunity. So we looked around for recent economic information we could cite in trying to be in relevant conversations, and we realized it was a bit of a vacuum there. So we filled that vacuum with that report that's there. We wanted to understand things from a 2025 perspective. A lot of the information was a little bit dated, and so that's what our researchers, Margareta and Rawi, did, and we're really starting to ramp up the building of awareness of that report so that people can understand the outsized contribution to the BC economy that comes from the operations in the northeast of BC, incredibly important. So those are a few things just to summarize, and I think if those weren't present, I think it would be harder for these conversations that mayors have, because you're the ones out there at the grocery store running into residents. You need trusted information, I expect, that you can have in your hip pocket, and I think all of you in the room should and could be part of that. And so what we're doing in our work at ResourceWorks in collaboration with industry associations, because we know that they have access to information that we can't just go and get, in the ability through the Indigenous Partnerships project to connect to the First Nations and all Indigenous communities in British Columbia, so we can understand what is the issue of the moment, because we don't really spend time on things that are out of date or stale. Life is too fast. We've got to be pin sharp, and I feel today is pin sharp. And I think Alex Mitchell from Abbotsford, you just collected a whole bunch of those pins, and that's part of what we're putting together here. So that's really probably the last time you'll hear me try to summarize what we're here for. We're collecting this, as I've mentioned before. We're making some videos. There's some interviews that Matt Embry is conducting, and I know he's probably interested in talking to everyone in the room. If he asked you to be an interview subject, I hope you'd consider it. And the start of UBCM week, we have a strong collective will here. It'll be reinforced, I think, at the reception at 4 to 5, and 5 to 6 upstairs. And then there's others. And by the way, thanks to the good people at Pacific Sands Resort, there's a door prize. It's a weekend for two at Pacific Sands Resort, but you can't be a winner of it if you don't put your business card in the bowl, and it will be drawn at the reception. So don't miss that, please. Now, I think it's Margaret is gesturing at me. Have I forgotten? Oh, she says, okay. All right. All right, it's time for me then to ask my friend Kim Hackstead